This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Wellness Collective podcast. I'm your host, Chandra Scott, and this evening I have the pleasure of speaking with the wonderful Michelle V. Scott, who is an amazing social work entrepreneur, and she is filled with so much knowledge and about the social work profession and how you can pivot and shift to make the career that you fully desire and that you have always dreamed of. And before we start, Michelle started her social work journey late in life. She had to pause her educational journey at the age of 18 when she became a teenage single mother, but she saved up her money and planned to return to college at the age of 33 to pursue her dreams of earning higher education. For over 20 years, she worked in the health insurance industry, where she also completed her MSW degree. And after graduation, she went back into the insurance industry, ensuring behavioral health clinicians were compliant inside of their clinical private practice. But it was during that time where she grew her private coaching practice that helps plus size chronic dieting women develop a new relationship with nutrition, fitness, and self care practices. But when the pandemic hit, Michelle Scott had several social work friends reach out to her, and that's when she started the Social Work Entrepreneur Academy. So, welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Chandra. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
You're welcome. All right. So, I follow you on YouTube and you are just amazing. I love the content that you share, and it has really helped me so far trying to navigate all of the ideas and the private practice that I'm actually working on starting. So, kudos to you and thank you for being such a gem in the social work community.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Sometimes it's funny because when you make content and you put it out there, you're not, people are listening, but you're like, are they really listening? And so to hear you say that is great to hear. Lets me know that it's definitely not falling on deaf ears.
Yes, it's definitely not falling on deaf ears. Yes. So, can you tell me how you got started in social work?
Oh, so my social work story is so funny because originally when I went back to college, I started when I went into my 4-year program, I started in dietetics because again, I was working with plus size chronic dieting women. And I thought that I was going to do it from a perspective of dietetics until I realized dietetics was full of chemistry, which I'm not great at. I'm not great at math, so therefore I'm not great at chemistry. And I remember shortly after taking some classes into the semester, mid-semester, I went to the registrar's office and was like, listen, what can I do? Because this is not going to work. And I had a professor who told me that I wrote well. So I transferred in my undergrad to a writing program. And after being in the writing program for a while and taking some courses, a lot of people started to talk about their master's program. And to be quite honest, Chandra, I hadn't given any thought to a master's program. For a very long time, I felt like I wasn't college worthy, right? And so I guess this is the importance of understanding a narrative and being able to replace that narrative, because I lived in a household where many times my mom would say college is so hard and it's so difficult and it's impossible. So I grew up believing that, and believing that I wouldn't be able to do school. So once I got in school and realized that for me, school was really easy. I was one of those students who, as long as I listened in class, I could pass the test and write the papers, which came really easily to me as well, writing. And so that's when I decided to do a master's program. However, I wasn't sure what. So I went to the Career Development Center in the program I was in at Buffalo State College. And I spoke with a woman named Lynn, and really she helped to change the trajectory of my career, because I took a test and, it said that I would do good in sociology and social work. And I remember thinking, well, sociology wasn't really tangible and thought to me as like, what kind of job could I get with that degree? But social work was. I had encountered social workers throughout my life for various different things that I had going on in life, like being a teen mom and, getting on social services as a teen mom. And so I thought that that would be a great lens for me to use to help the people that I wanted to work with, which were plus size chronic dieting women. And so I took that test and saw that social work would be a good fit. And I wrote my essay 2 years early for the program and let it set until it was time to do my application, which got delayed because my mom got diagnosed with cancer in 2012, right when in my last semester of school for my undergrad. So I ended up getting my first master's degree in creative studies first because it was going to be less rigid than the MSW program. But once that 2-year program ended for my first master's and she was in remission at that point, I immediately enrolled for my MSW program in 2016.
Love it. So when you enrolled in the MSW program, did you know, did you want to be like a clinical social worker? Did you want to be more macro focused, or were you interested in owning like your own private practice at the time, or were you just kind of winging it?
So I immediately, going into the program, I knew I would be an entrepreneur. So my grandfather was an entrepreneur. He opened his first restaurant in 1963. By the time that I was born in 1975, I think he had 4 or 5 locations. So I was born into entrepreneurship. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My aunt, when she married, her husband had a business here locally. So growing up, I was just immersed in entrepreneurship. After my mom took over when my grandfather passed away in 86, she ran the business until 99, I believe, when she closed down. I had no desire to do restaurant work, but again, I knew that I would be an entrepreneur. So throughout my life, knowing that, when I decided to work with chronic plus size dieting women and do it from the social work perspective, I knew immediately that I would be coming out as an entrepreneur. However, in doing that, new entrepreneurs typically don't make any money. So I knew that I would get a job. And I tried clinical for a while. It was not a great fit for me. I love clinical work, though. I definitely think that the social workers who can engage in clinical work, I love what they do because it is so hard. There's so much that you hear in the stories that clients tell you and the things that they're dealing with. I found it a bit difficult for me. So I started to look more at macro social work. However, going into the insurance field, that was somewhat mezzo, I guess, in what I was doing. And then this past April, I had the opportunity at my part-time job to go full-time. And so I left the insurance industry and went full-time in my current position that I still work because I've decided, I decided some years ago, I'm not retiring until I'm 50. I'm not retiring into my business until I'm 50. So I'm still working in a very much mezzo role, heavy mezzo. So I love what I do. I'm a manager at our local disaster response center. And I work with all systems. So I work with the local school system. I work with churches. I work with nonprofit agencies and other local agencies. I work with politicians. I work with city officials. I work with the city directly. I work with the county. And then I work directly with community members. So because I have so many tentacles out in the community in my position, it just has so much variety. It is absolutely amazing. So I do love the work that I do as a social worker, in addition to the work that I do as a social work entrepreneur.
Wow, love it. So the term social work entrepreneur, unfortunately, is still fairly new to many people, and they definitely don't teach us about it in grad school.
No, they do
Um,
not.
right. So I appreciate how you are shining light on this new path because for myself, a lot of people see like that I wear many hats and then I'm doing different things. And I'm like, but they all are aligned with one another.
Mhm.
And it's still aligned with social work, which is what I studied, which is what I love. So it's not like I'm just doing things. It's called social work entrepreneurship. So I love
Right.
how, you are really coining that term and you're, creating lanes for us because a lot of people don't understand that it doesn't have to be case management. It doesn't have to be um, talk therapy. It could be so
Mhm.
many things. And like for me, I'm an author. So that's one
Mhm.
facet where, I like to share my expertise. So writing a book, having a self-care workbook and things like that. And,
Mhm.
turning it into not just a paperback, but also digital products. So can you explain um, different ways in which social workers can become entrepreneurs? I know you speak a lot about having digital products, but can you elaborate on just other facets of entrepreneurship as a social worker as well?
Absolutely. So, my business, the Social Work Entrepreneur Academy, it literally started by accident. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was working with my plus size chronic dieters. They were all private pay. And as you can imagine, the pandemic hit, people were out of work, and every one of my clients canceled.
Oh,
But what
wow.
happened was I had a lot of friends reaching out, asking questions about starting their private practice because their thing was, if I'm going to work from home, in this pandemic, I might as well just start my own business. Telehealth, we had rise of telehealth and it became a thing. Even though it had been a thing for years, it became a thing that people actually started to use and could see was feasible for our services. And so, as I started to help them, I created my podcast, well, the podcast, which stands for Social Work Entrepreneur Learning Lab. And it kind of took on a life of its own. And then I remember because I was creating a digital course to show people how to start their private practice, I had a lot of social workers asking me about digital products. What was this all about? What did I mean, a digital course? And I started to explain to them what I was doing, and they wanted more information on that. And that's where the YouTube channel entered into the program. And so there's so many areas that social workers can go into for entrepreneurship. And I have a friend, she laughs because she's like, Michelle, you are a business generating idea person because I love to come up with business ideas. It's just, it's always come easily to me. And I know that I've often talked to social workers about really expanding our horizons because we're also given this narrative, or at least I know I definitely was in my social work program, that you go into it. And if you do want to become an entrepreneur, that it's usually within case management, clinical private practice. But I also, as I started to study social work and understand our lens, it really lends itself to many areas for many people, right? So oftentimes we're also told that we can, really the core population for us are vulnerable populations, right? And I totally agree with this. However, I think that we become many social workers, we start to get tunnel vision and we don't look at other populations that could use our services, right? So when you think about corporations and executive level employees who may need help breaking through certain barriers that are holding them back. Um, I know that coaching, or at least in the circle that I run in, many of the social workers don't respect coaching. But I think there's a place for it in our tool belt, right? Because what I like to often say is, many people who are suffering with mental illness definitely need our services, but there are also
Mhm.
people who are mentally healthy who have some behaviors that they would like to change, right? Which coaching is a great fit for that because many times we still use the same skill sets, um, or the same treatment modalities, right? So it could still be CBT, but we're using it for a different reason to help people maybe break, you know, some barrier that's blocking them, whether it's limiting beliefs, things like that. So I definitely think social workers can utilize their skill sets for that. I think just knowing that I was in corporate America for 23 years, there's so many areas within the corporate sector that social workers can create an entrepreneurship lane, right? So you have HR. I think it's important for social workers to get into human resources, maybe not as an employee, but in freelance work, right? Because if you have an organization that has a lot of absenteeism, you know, what is impacting the employees that are making them have these high absenteeism rates, right? And I think if we start to look at those impacts and get human resources to understand, okay, well, you have your employee who is walking 3 miles to get to the bus stop, right? They live in a rural area with limited access to transportation. I think that these are important things to get human resources to understand, right? So we could create these digital products that we can license out to these corporations to train their staff to be more trauma informed, to train the organization about trauma and the impacts of trauma and how it shows up in performance, right? So I just think, again, there's so many areas that social worker skill sets can be utilized, and they're not being utilized to their full potential at this current moment. And so my goal was to really kind of break out of that box of the only thing we can do is clinical private practice or this micro work, and really get people to thinking about licensing their intellectual property, their workflows, the things that they create to help people, and, you know, getting that out there so they are scaling their time, right? Oftentimes on my YouTube channel, you'll hear me talk about trading time for money, right? Now, essentially, when you become a digital entrepreneur, you are still trading time for money. You're just trading it as scale, right? So imagine you do a workshop that you deliver live, and maybe you charge people $50 for this workshop, right? Well, imagine if you record that workshop, you put it as a digital product, you sell it for $47, you sell it at scale because people can access that workshop again. They can purchase it without you physically having to show up and perform that function again. And imagine if you sell that workshop for a year or two before you update it, the amount of energy expenditure put into that is a lot less because you were able to sell it at scale. And so I think once you start to get people to realize, oh, wait, I don't have to continually show up and deliver the live workshop. I can deliver it live the first time, which might be a premium charge, and then deliver it at a lower price point at scale for people who weren't able to make it. And that's really maximizing the time you spend in an activity and then the ability to scale it and sell it at scale. So instead of working for $25 an hour, you might put in 100 hours to develop that digital product. But over time, if you sell so many units and you do the calculations, if you're selling it and, you know, based on how many units you're selling, you might be averaging at about $300 per hour for the energy expenditure that you put into creating that digital product. So that's a vast difference to get $300 per hour because you've scaled this digital product as opposed to $25 an hour, like showing up and trading your time each time you do something for that money.
Wow. Thank you so much.
You're
So
welcome.
I know you also have experience on the insurance side, and
Yes.
you're very knowledgeable about the credentialing process and how to start a private practice. So can you share with us about your coaching business as well to help clinicians start their practice?
Yes, absolutely. So it was very interesting because when I was with my last insurance job, a huge role was to ensure that clinicians were compliant in their private practice, made sure that they knew how to bill a CMS 1500 and do all of the things, right? Get prior authorization when needed. All of these lovely words that many clinicians hate to hear because it means a lot of time on the telephone with the insurance company, verifying benefits and doing all of these things. And one thing that I found was when I was working with my clinicians, particularly my social workers, many of them would have clinical private practices and they were using their social security numbers to bill claims, which if you know anything about a claim, when it comes through electronically, it requires you to list an EIN number. If you do not have an EIN number, you list your social. And so many people's hands touch those claims and see that social security number that it is really very dangerous. So nobody was really educating the social workers on the importance of things like having a tax ID number. So your personal social is not out there on these claims that you have circulating in the world. Even when, clients call the insurance company, if you're utilizing your social, they can get access to that information. So I thought that was important. I also thought, a lot of times I would see social workers who weren't particularly business savvy. So they weren't doing things like paying quarterly estimated taxes. They weren't doing anything like keeping their accounts or their accounting accurate, for reporting purposes, right? They weren't doing bookkeeping. All of these back-end business things that are not very sexy at all, but are very important to the longevity of your business. And so in seeing these things, I started to think, okay, well, I can work as a consultant to really utilize my expertise to show them, how to start a solid private practice, like the foundation of it, right? Because a house built on a weak foundation is very shaky. And so I wanted to ensure that social workers had a strong foundation and understanding those business basics, things like getting an MPI number, the difference between an MPI 1 and an MPI 2 for groups, right? Because I had providers who were solo practitioners getting an MPI number 2, which is for your group practices, right, and facilities. And so it was just these little things that were causing them turmoil that I thought, okay, if I start educating people, maybe there will be less turmoil for them in their private practice. I know I had one young lady who was billing, she had interns and she was billing incident 2 is what it's called. And billing incident 2 is for mid-level. So that's going to be like your physician's assistants, your nurse practitioners. And you can't social workers cannot bill mid-levels, right? They can't bill incident 2. That's held for people who are like doctors and psychologists and things like that. And so some months into it, she realized she was in trouble with the insurance company because they wrote her. They finally did an investigation as claims continued to come in, and she ended up owing them thousands of dollars. And I worked with her on a consulting capacity to help her get a lot of that fixed and get everything in order. And that's when like I said, I realized that there was an immense need for social workers because, again, we're not being taught in school to be business savvy. So I really just thought it was important because I didn't want to see another social worker get caught up into the grips of owing insurances thousands of dollars. I've seen one social worker who had to sell her home and move back in with her family because of insurance claims being messed up and her owing the insurance company hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow. So when you bill for a session, how soon does the clinician receive like the reimbursement or the payout from that session?
It's usually according to if you're set up on direct deposit or if you're getting paper checks. Most clinicians these days are set up on direct deposit and they bill electronically, right? So the adjudication of a claim is much faster through electronic means as opposed to paper billing claims. So if you're billing electronically and you're set up on direct deposit, typically the turnaround time is 7 days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So there are many social workers who they're interested in private practice, but they're not quite ready yet. So they may be an independent contractor under another outpatient mental health clinic. So what advice would you give for them or different tips that they should look out for when they're working as independent contractors?
Some great things to look out for is just to read your contract thoroughly. Read it and then read it again and read it a third time, because the devil is in the details, right? And one thing that I know about independent contractor agreements is many times social workers, are in what we call misalignment. And so you have social workers who are independent contractors, but the place that they're contracting with wants to dictate hours and dictate types of services and these things that are usually traditionally aligned with employment and not as an independent contractor. So, reading your contract agreement, understanding that you are still the boss of yourself, even though that you're an independent contractor with this organization. If you do find that they start to do stipulations like hours and all of these things, then they need to put you on payroll and give you the benefits. But if they're not going to do that, then you have to stand in that space and know your boundaries and really understand what is required of you as an independent contractor and what is not required of you as an independent contractor, because it aligns more with being an employee.
Wonderful. Great advice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So is there anything that we can be on the lookout for with the Social Work Entrepreneur Academy? Any new products or events coming up?
So many things going on. So I just relaunched my weekly newsletter inside of my email platform. So people who have come into contact with my business have signed up or gotten on my email list through various means. And so I have that going on, which provides a lot of information weekly to help social workers who are doing clinical private practice or digital online business. I have an upcoming workshop in March for prompt engineering, which is a very new hot buzzword because we have the rise of AI and Chat GPT, and these are systems and things that are not going anywhere. They are literally revolutionizing the way that we do business. And I really want social workers to understand how to use AI and how it can benefit the profession. And prompt engineering and understanding how to prompt the AI systems is going to be huge, right? Because even though AI is very efficient, we have to prompt it on what to do. And the more knowledgeable you are about how to write a prompt and how to prompt the AI, the more efficient you are, right? So great input gives great output because the output of the AI can change based on the directives you give it. And so I really want to teach social workers about those directives and understanding the importance of learning them and all of those things. So I have a training for that coming up, a workshop for that on March 4th. And then as always, I have the Swell community right now that's on Patreon. And so this is where people kind of enter that customer journey that I take them on if they're starting a digital online business. We go through writing a business plan, which a lot of social workers that I talk to who are entrepreneurs, they skip that step, and it's vitally important to have that business plan. So I take them through that. And right now I'm beta testing my digital business training suite inside of Patreon. And so a beta test is where you just you let people in as founding members. They help you essentially build the course by telling you, what you missed or what they didn't understand, so you can refine your product. And then I'll launch that in full next year. And so as a beta tester, of course, they get it significantly cheaper than they will once the final product is released. So there's that going on. So quite a few irons in the fire as I continue to, work on expanding my own business.
Love it. And are you still accepting coaching clients?
I have two potential clients that might sign up, but beyond that, I am not accepting coaching clients right now because my plate is very full. I'm thinking now I'm at the point where I need to hire an assistant. So until I get that done, I am on pause for coaching clients.
No, I need you to have me on.
Oh, you're on my wait. You're one of the
Okay.
two that I'm holding a slot for. You're one of the two
Okay,
that I'm
great.
holding the slot for, but there wasn't many spaces left.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It was great speaking with you. You are a wealth of knowledge. I wish you much success. And please continue striving and thriving and helping to reach as many social workers as you can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. It has been a pleasure. And I look forward to continuing to collaborate with you and grow as entrepreneurs and see what life brings us.
Yes, definitely. All right. Thank you for joining the Wellness Collective podcast. On our screen, you can see where you can follow Michelle on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also check our description for her email address as well as her website link as well. And please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.